Hey everybody, this is Steve from PopCultureMaven.com. We're back with this week's new comic book reviews, and I'm telling you, there is a ton of books this week. It is absolutely insane how many books that came out this week. So we're just going to cut to the chase and get right to it. First up, we have One Star Squadron #1, written by Mark Russell with artwork by Steve Lieber. So this one's kind of interesting because it for me, well, one, you all know that I'm a huge fan of Mark Russell, and I really like when he does the social commentary and stuff. And he does that here, but a lot of it's really, in a way, it reminds me a little bit of Justice League International, except for not the bwahaha sort of thing. It's more of a lot of these really second string characters. But what's interesting is there's the underlying what you would say of corporate America, but with superheroes, kind of like corporate America is running the superhero team that doesn't quite know that it's being run by a corporate American company, sort of thing. And that's really kind of the best way to describe it. But there's also more. I think what I really liked about what Russell has done here, he's really infused it with like humanity, and the irony is that humanity comes from Red Tornado, who is actually a robot. So there's really a lot going on here in the setup, but it's a really wonderful first issue because it lays the groundwork and everything. And we also, I think what's interesting is how he's using the Power Girl character. That, like, is she kind of working for the company, or is she trying to help these heroes? I mean, it's really interesting, and like I said, there's a lot going on here, but he doesn't, he sets it up but doesn't give necessarily a lot away in this, a lot of the story away in this first issue. But that's good because it leads with a nice cliffhanger into the second issue. So it definitely gives you a reason to come back. The other big win for this book is Steve Lieber. I'm a really big fan of his. I've really enjoyed his artwork. And if you have not bought the Jimmy Olsen series, he did the artwork and Chip Zdarsky wrote. It was wonderful. You really must check that out. But this is really some of his really nice work, and it's a lot of the issue is just kind of people standing around talking. So he does a really good job. Like I said, he's a wonderful artist, and he really is perfect for this book. It's a really great marriage of the writing and the artwork. So this is really a wonderful book, and I really recommend it this week. Next up, we have Hawkeye Kate Bishop #1. By Mariki Nijkamp, with artwork by Enid Belem. So obviously, I think this is really timed because there's the Hawkeye miniseries on Disney Plus, and I think this is really tied into the Kate Bishop. Now, I know obviously Kate Bishop from the Hawkeye run with David Aja and Chip Zdarsky, and so this is kind of falls into that. But I also was really big fan of the Kate Bishop and the West Coast Avengers series that came out a couple years ago, written by Kelly Thompson. But this one just kind of falls flat. It's not that it's bad. It's just that you're reading the issue and it's all nice and everything, but it really just doesn't. It sadly doesn't really seem to go anywhere, which is kind of odd because I think Kate Bishop's a very interesting character, but only if really handled the correct way. And unfortunately, Ninja Camp, it really doesn't quite. Once again, it's a nice story, but it doesn't really have a lot of weight to it, and I think that's kind of where it kind of suffers from. The artwork by Belem is nice, but there is a few times where it's a little slim on the backgrounds. It's not fatal, but it's pretty standard artwork. It's nice and everything, and it does its job. But this one really, for me, kind of missed the mark, only because it just never quite takes off and really goes anywhere. So I don't think it's bad, but I just don't think it's one of my better. I don't think it's definitely one of the better Kate Bishop stories, which is kind of a shame because I really like her as a character. Next up, we have Daisy #1, written and drawn by Colin Lemire or Lorimere. So this is kind of interesting in the sense of the best way to kind of describe the story is it's so this mother's looking for her lost son, and she gets this phone call from this small town, and in a way there's this cult. I guess you really could kind of say it's a cult where the kind of preacher or the person that kind of runs it is this really kind of a giant. It's like really she's like 2 times the normal size of a tall person. So it's really interesting in the sense of there's a lot of mystery here that Lorimere introduces in this first issue, but I think it's really interesting because he sets up a really intriguing story with like definitely like there's a million questions and really not many answers, but there was something about the story that was really quite fascinating. And there were a couple times where it was the text was a little bit on the dense side, and you had to kind of step back and really let the story kind of wash over you. But I think it's off to a really interesting start. It's definitely something a bit on the unique side and really intriguing. And then of course his artwork is actually really, really nice. There's some really nice artwork, and what was really fascinating, and I'll put it up here, is when he introduces the really tall character, instead of going from left to right, it's a full page, or it's full 2-page spread of her introduction, which is really just very fascinating to do, and it really adds a lot to the impact of the character through the artwork of her introduction, which is really intriguing. I think if you're looking for something different, this one would be definitely worth checking out. It was really intriguing, and I'm kind of interested in seeing where Lorimere takes it after this first issue. Next up, we have Batman 118, written by Joshua Williamson, with artwork by George Molina and Mikkel Janin. Now, even though this is issue 118, this is the beginning of a new story arc with a new writer, Joshua Williamson, because James Tynion IV has left Batman. And while I enjoyed some aspects of Tynion's, actually I enjoyed a lot of Tynion's stories, but as of late, it seems like I wasn't really a big fan of the Joker War, and then kind of the post that it just seemed like it just really, he was trying to change things too much, and it didn't, it always felt like things were changing, and it wasn't really a lot of underlying heft to hold things up. And then there was the introduction of villains left and right. It's like this issue where I think what I really enjoyed about Williamson's first issue is, in a lot of ways, he really got back to basics. I mean, he has brought back Bruce Wayne to Gotham. Now, yeah, okay, he's not a millionaire and all that kind of stuff. But the point was, I think that's what I was having a problem with Tynion's finals stories in Batman, is that he really got away. I didn't have a problem with what he did with Bruce Wayne. I had a problem with he took Batman away from Bruce Wayne, and everybody else was kind of Batman. There was that, and then all the other Bat family characters, which was kind of interesting. But at the end of the day, I think he just kind of got a little too far away, where Williamson really, within this first issue, really brings it back to him being in Gotham. Now, once again, I think he can go forward with these changes of him losing his fortune, things like that. So I think at least this first issue I was really happy with. It really, I think, set a good tone going forward, where hopefully it's more concentrated on Bruce and Gotham, and not this whole like depressing Gotham story that has just, for me, really hasn't worked that well. And the artwork here by Molina and Janin is just absolutely gorgeous. This is a really good looking book. I mean, Janin is we've seen his stuff. He's been working on the Bat book for quite a while, but Molina is really a nice, really different change, but it just has a really great look to it. It's really just wonderful to look at. It's really gorgeous. I'm very excited, and I really hope that this team stays on this book. So I think it's worth, if you have been maybe kind of burnt out with Batman, I think this is definitely a good jumping on point. And I kind of think well, I really enjoyed it, at least in this first issue, and kind of hope, fingers crossed, that it keeps moving forward pretty well, that with the setup that Williamson has done here. Next up, we have Devil's Reign #1, written by Chip Zdarsky with artwork by Marco Cicchetto. Now, this spins out of the recent Daredevil series that they were doing. So ultimately, the question is, have you had to have read Daredevil recently? And I don't think you do. I will definitely give it to Zdarsky that he gives you the information that you kind of need to get going on this story that he's telling here. So what it is Kingpin's the mayor, and so what he has decided to do, I'm going to ban superheroes. They're evil, they're bad, they cause more problems. And that is the basic story. So it starts from like the Daredevil, but then the story threads move throughout the Marvel universe, where the villains now have become, or some of the villains in the Marvel universe have become like the police under Kingpin, and things like that. It's kind of interesting. I think where I struggled a little bit with this book, I think the premise was kind of interesting, but then once it got to the point where they just, this superhero and they're saving somebody from building fires, but we're going to arrest them because superheroes suck. That just never, it didn't quite land really well. I think, I don't know. I think that maybe the concept was good, but I don't know, if this story needs like a 6-issue miniseries with 20 spin-off books. I don't know. I liked this. I liked things about this book, but I think in the long run, I didn't quite love it as it first started. I think it had a first good act, but then it just kind of struggled a little bit. I will say I really enjoyed Cicchetto's artwork. He did a really wonderful job when he was working on Daredevil in this. It's a really good looking book. I just think somewhere for me, it just kind of missed it. I don't think it's terrible. I just think it missed the boat somewhere for me. Next up, we have Buckethead #1, written by Chabot, with artwork by George Kambadias. So this is so basically what the story is. This boy and his mom moved to a new city, and it's the kind of, there's something weird about this city going on, and it's the basic premise you kind of read a million times before, and I think it's interesting because what it is this town has a mystery and everything. I think really what it comes down to is the question is, this first issue was interesting and sets up the story, and like I said, you've read it kind of a million times, but then it turns into like kind of the Twilight Zone Matrix fringe sort of thing, where these aliens, observers, or whatever are doing things in this town. So I think it's one of those things, once again, I've said, you've read this story a million times before, and I think Chabot sets up an interesting story. The question is it going to be different than what I feel it should be? Is it going to be different? And so far in this first issue, I don't know. It's a very basic setup, and it's hard to say. I don't think it's a bad setup. I just don't think it's really imaginative as it could have been. I didn't feel there were enough curveballs to change what I feel that this story is going to be. I will say I did like Kambadias's artwork. It's actually nice, has a nice touch. I mean, this is a boombox, so this is an all ages book. So on that end, if for a younger reader who's not going to know these type of stories, I think it's actually good. But I think if you're a more seasoned reader, I think that's where you're going to struggle, like maybe I did with the book. I don't think it's bad. I think it's interesting, but I think it's pretty basic if you're a seasoned reader. So we'll kind of go with that. Next up, we have World of Krypton #1, written by Robert Venditti, with artwork by Michael Avon Oeming. So this is interesting. There's been a number of Krypton stories told over the years, and this one obviously goes into the past, and it really has to deal with the House of El, basically. And it's interesting because we kind of see all the main players. We see Kara. At this point, Kal-El has not been born yet. And the General Zod is, well, and we kind of know this from the comics, where he was a friend. He was part of the family, basically, of Jor-El. So this first issue is a setup, but I really don't want to give too much away, because I think it was a good first issue. I did enjoy the first issue. I think it's a nice setup. I think Venditti does a really good job of introducing the main characters of the family, and also kind of what's going on Krypton. Like it's the precursor to the disaster of the planet blowing up. The really big win for this book is Oeming's artwork, which is really wonderful, and I like his style, where it has like an animation sort of look, or cartoony look, but it really just has the way he puts the angles on the characters and stuff. It's really a beautiful book, and it's really, really interesting. So I like I said, I like the first issue. I think it's worth checking out, and I'm kind of intrigued to see where they take it from here, because it did get off to a good start. Next up, we have Mother Goose One Shot #1, written by Frank Terry, with artwork by Joe Asima. So this kind of spins out. So Aftershock's been doing these oversized one shots. It's one and done stories. So the part of the story does spin out from, there was a recent anthology where one of the characters, one of the police, the female police officer, comes from that story. But I don't think you necessarily need to read that Little Miss Moffat story. Because it was based on fairy tales. So this is kind of extension, because Frank Terry wrote that story. So basically what he does here is he takes the story, he blends like fairy tales, but the best way to think of, like, it's like Fables meets the Mafia. That's really the premise here that he's working with. So you see the characters like the Three Little Pigs and things like that throughout there, and Bigby. Roughly, you see these characters, and he kind of blends it into this mobbish, Goodfellas type story, and I think it was pretty decent. I think it's a good one shot. Like I said, it's a one and done, which is kind of nice. So you can just pick this up by itself. Asima's artwork's really, really nice. I did really enjoy the artwork, and it has a nice, good beginning, middle, and end. It wraps the story up, but I think the other thing is that he obviously does have stories to tell in this universe that he's created. And so we could see more, but they're connected, but not necessarily, like I said, you wouldn't necessarily have to read the Miss Moffat story. You miss a little bit, but I don't think it's anything fatal to this story. And like I said, with Asima's artwork, it's actually a really nice book. So if you're looking for something a little different, and like I said, a kind of a one and done, it's worth checking out. Next up, we have Fantastic Four Life Story #5, written by Mark Russell, and with artwork by Sean Izaakse. So once again, we're now in the 2000s. We've done the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and now we're in 2000s. So this is really the big lead up to Galactus coming to Earth in this particular timeline, this imaginary timeline that Russell's created, and it's really interesting how. So basically, Earth has X amount of years before Galactus gets here. And so Silver Surfer makes a deal with Reed Richards that if Reed Richards becomes the new Herald, then then Galactus will not consume Earth. So that's really what it is. And what's interesting is that I think what Russell's done that's interesting, because now, since everybody on Earth has a finite amount of time, that there is no more wars or anything like that, and people just kind of enjoy life, which is really intriguing. And I think setting the Fantastic Four in that type of universe is really interesting. And there's also Franklin ends up marrying uh, Surrey and having kids, and it's really interesting. I love how Mark Russell's basically building the Fantastic Four, but creating a different type of storyline for them without any history or anything. He's literally building, and it's like a what if history. That's kind of the best way to describe it. And it's really been a really great read. I've really enjoyed this. This issue was really, really good. And once again, Isaac's artwork is really fantastic in this book. It's a really good looking book. And we got one more issue to go, so it'll be really interesting to see where it goes from here. And I'm really, like I said, I've really enjoyed this. If you're a fan of Fantastic Four and really kind of just want to read a good Fantastic Four story, this has been really wonderful. Next up, we have What's the Furthest Place from Here, number 2, written by Tyler Boss with artwork by Matthew Rosenberg. So once again, this has really, really been the first issue was really intriguing, and yes, we're in the throngs of like post-apocalyptic stories, which is another one. But this is interesting because you have there really are no adults. That's one of the basic story premises of this story. We don't know why. But so there's these gangs. Think of like the Warriors in a post-apocalyptic. That's, you have all these different gangs and everything. So this one gang who basically had a record store ends up, because so they've lost one of their members and they're trying to find her, and so they're going and then they try to get back to their territory. They find out that their house has basically been burnt to the ground. So now they have to go find a new place to live. And that's what this issue kind of deals with. And I really have to hand it to Boss that this has really been interesting, because once again, we've really been inundated with a lot of post-apocalyptic storylines. And yet he, I think, has found an interesting twist and given this book a nice feel to something that definitely does feel different. And then Rosenberg's artwork is just really, really wonderful. I'm really enjoying this book. I think it's really intriguing. And I like how the pacing on it's just wonderful on both the story and the artwork, how it just has a really nice feeling of unfolding as you're reading it, and it's really wonderful. I'm really, really enjoying this book, and really you should be checking it out. It's really great looking. It's a really good story with some really great artwork. You definitely check it out. Next up, we have Dark Knights of Steel number 2, written by Tom Taylor with artwork by Yasmin Perturi. So what this is this is the DC universe kind of in medieval times. So we've slowly been introducing. We know that Superman's parents are alive. They've become the king and queen, and but what's interesting, when we learned the last issue, a bit of a spoiler, but it's been a month, so if you haven't read it, so spoiler alert, that Green Lantern helped Green Arrow kill Jor-El. So now there's the ramifications of this, but we're also we're starting to learn of other hero characters from the DC universe. We get introduced to Wonder Woman, we get introduced to Supergirl and Black Lightning and his family. So once again we have the kingdom of the elves, and then there's this kind of fractions on the outside, like, are the elves actually good? Are they evil? I don't think that's really the thing. I think that's just there's these kingdoms and they're run by different fractions. And a lot of and basically what Taylor's doing here is a lot of these stories are weaving in and out with these characters. We're not quite sure of what the motives of Green Lantern and Green Arrow were. We don't quite know that yet, but we're starting to learn all these other kind of mythology stories kind of bubbling up into the house of the L story. So that's what's interesting. And then of course, Paturi's artwork is really, really one of the main selling points. This is a really great looking book, but I think it's interesting because there's not necessarily a lot of action going on in the book. It's a lot of dialogue, and once again, I always say if you can pull that off and make that intriguing visually, then it's a win. This has really been a big surprise. I've been really, really impressed with this, and it's really just been a lot of fun. And really you should be checking out. It's been quite a surprise. I definitely, and I say this again, it's like a DC Elseworlds story. It takes place outside the DC universe, but I love how, Taylor is using all these characters and making them different, both visually and feeling. And then with Paturi's artwork, it's gorgeous. You really should be checking it out. Next up, we have My Bad #2, written by Mark Russell and Bryce Ingman, with artwork by Peter Krause. So once again, what Russell and Ingman are doing here, it's not really a parody. It is kind of a parody of superheroes, but it's more of a social commentary and satirical look at superheroes, which obviously Russell's really good with. And I love, so basically we have here the Batman character Chandelier Man, and he has been sent a salad shooter as a gift to his Bruce Wayne type character, and he thinks it's somebody, so he's trying to investigate why this person sent him a salad shooter, and do they know his secret identity, and that's all it's about. It's just about this stupid stuff, and yet Russell just nails it. I mean, he absolutely nails it. And then so he did the main story, and then what it is Ingman does a couple backup stories with the villain, and overall this is just a really great, nice satirical look at superheroes, and they're just having fun with it. And then I really, Krause's artwork is really nice. He does the superhero thing. He does a nice straight superhero artwork, but he also, you can tell that there's like that comical nod and wink visually that he really brings to this book. And it's just a lot of fun. If you definitely, not so much tired of superheroes, but if you want to have some fun, more on the satirical side, definitely check this book out. This is really fun stuff. Next up, we have Superman, Son of Kal-El 2021 annual, written by Tom Taylor with artwork by Steve Pugh and Clayton Henry. So what this is, first of all, this is really a nice one and done story. So if you've, of course, now with the Son of Superman's son coming out, that's what I'm trying to get to. So what? Because that's been in the news because he's bisexual. But what's really nice is that this gives, I think, a really good taste of what Taylor is trying to do in the book. So it sets it up with Superman basically putting Lex Luthor in jail. So now Superman has left Earth. Superman's son is now Superman. And so what this story is how Lex gets out of prison, how he cheats his way out of prison and everything else. And what it comes down to is there's a bet, and the bet is on who wins the game of chess, whether it's Son of Superman or Lex Luthor. And it really is, it's just a simple story. And I think that's why it kind of works so well, is one, that it's self-contained. You don't have to have read, you can totally read this on its own. And that is a smart move, because a lot of these annuals, that the couple that came out last week, have tied into the regular storyline. I think an annual should stand on its own. I think it should be like a good introduction to a character. It's something you can hand somebody and say, hey, I know you've heard about, you asked me about this book, and I think this is a good introduction without like the excess baggage of the continuity. And then you have a really good story, and then you have Steve Pugh and Clayton Henry's artwork, which is really good. And it's really kind of, for me, it was kind of hard to tell, even though their styles are not super similar. The art blended really well, so I couldn't quite tell, which is actually a good thing. So that actually worked out in the art. It's a really nice looking book. Once again, there's a lot of dialogue, in the sense of There's not a lot of big action scenes in this, but that's, I think, what really helps it is it's just a good, solid story. And Taylor's really been bringing some really good stories into the DC universe lately. And he's definitely one to watch. His books have been really good. And then I'm a huge fan of both Steve Pugh and Clayton Henry's artwork. And this is definitely worth checking out. It's a good one and done story, and I really enjoyed it. Next up, we have Arkham City, The Order of the World, #3, written by Dan Waters with artwork by Danny. So this continues the post Arkham Asylum destruction, escapees, and all that kind of stuff. So the Doctor is now using the Ten-Eyed Man the Ten-Eyed Man has discovered that Gotham itself is really Arkham Asylum. Back in the day, Dr. Arkham set the whole city of Gotham is set up like a prison. And so now that there's the escapees, she's able to use the map that the Ten-Eyed Man has drawn to find the people, the villains that are still alive that have escaped from Arkham. So this issue centers around them finding Solomon Grundy, which is Solomon Grundy is a great character. I really love how Waters is really used him here. It was really interesting, and I really liked it. And I think what not only that does. Of course, it introduces a new character into the story, but the way that the Waters is continuing this story and how it is unfolding is just really fascinating. This is really, I think, one of the few things that has came out of this Joker war fiasco for out of the Bat books. I really enjoyed this book, and it definitely stands on its own. You just have to, and they've and Waters explained it quite well, that all the stuff you need to know to get going. And then, of course, on top of this, you have Danny's gorgeous artwork. This is really a great looking book, and it's just visually dark and dank and just absolutely gorgeous looking. It's definitely, I've been really impressed with this book, and I really, if you've been turned off a little bit by the Bat books, you should really check it out. It's really good. Next up, we have DC Horror Presents Soul Plumber #3, written by Marcus Parks and Henry Zabrowski, with artwork by PJ Holden and John McCrae. So the third issue, I think, really is quite interesting, because so now we have he has brought back he's brought this being in from another universe and from another dimension. And so oh God, how do I describe it? There's so much insanity going on. There's so much going on that it's just so he goes back to the 7-Eleven he works at. So there's this bishop that is in a suit of armor. He looks like kind of Thorish, and he's going to kill him because he's been told by the head bishop or whatever that he's evil. He's bringing evil into the world. And so there's that, and then the spirit, I guess the being or the spirit that he brought over through his soul plumbing machine is basically comes and kills the guy that's trying to kill him. There's so much going on. This book is absolutely insane, and that's what I love about it. There's so much going on, and there's so much craziness, and yet I really have to hand it to Parks and Zabarski that they are really keeping. This story could totally spiral out of control, and yet, even with all the craziness going on, there's just a sense of they keep that story on the path, and that's why it's working so well. Is there's so much going on, and there's a big reveal at the end that really kind of changes what we thought all this was really about. And I don't want to say, I guess I backtrack a little bit. It's not so much changes, but it really opens up what's going on with this soul plumbing and all this kind of stuff. And it really just, it's just you really, I was just blown away by it, because it's just really fascinating, and I love this, and once again, it's a great horror book. There's a lot of great elements. There's some nice gore in this issue too, but it's just really, I think what I like about it is it's kind of that comedy horror genre, which I think is really, it's hard to do, and once again, Parks and Zabarsky do it really well, and then Holden and McCrae's artwork is just really wonderful. They are bringing it, and I think you need strong artists like this that is able to basically capture this insanity visually, and they nail it. It's a good read. This book is just knocking my socks off. I love this book, and the artwork is fantastic. You should really be checking it out. It's really wonderful. Next up, we have Amazing Fantasy #5, the final issue, written and drawn by Carr Andrews. So this really leads up. I really, it's going to be hard to review because I really don't want to reveal anything. But basically, what it is so there's this kind of amazing fantasy island. It's kind of a different dimension. So they're basically trying to get to Earth. They're riding this giant bone dragon to Earth so they can basically take over Earth with zombies. So that's kind of what it is. And like I said, I don't want to really give away too much, but I really have enjoyed this. It's a what if type story for sure. And I really like the fact that the way he used the characters, and also how he fit, that a lot of these characters have a connection. Like, there's obviously the big connection is with Peter Parker and Uncle Ben, and that I think is really we didn't really start out that way, but that's what I love about Andrew's story, is that story of Peter and Uncle Ben was really the key to like this book coming together, and it really was fantastic. I mean, the story has really been wonderful. The artwork is amazing. Artwork is absolutely stunning, and it really, if you missed it, I know there'll be a trade of it. Really check it out. This was really great if you're a fan of Marvel but don't want to get into like a big long thing, and definitely if you like that what if type format of stories that use these characters in different ways, this was really wonderful, and I really, really recommend checking out. If you missed it, definitely pick up the trade when it comes out. It'll probably come out early next year. Next up, we have Black Hammer Reborn #5, written by Jeff Lemire, with Malachi Ward, artwork by Malachi Ward and Matthew Sheehan. So once again, I'd say we're close to the halfway point. So we're starting to see a lot of the stuff come together. There's both present and past flash story with Lucy and Black Hammer, where she's present as a mom and everything. And then we go back to when Lucy was early Black Hammer, which we had previously seen in the previous Black Hammer comics. Now this takes place later, where there's only her and Skulldigger are pretty much the only heroes left. So now we have that. We've led up to that. So now there's like another universe or another city kind of coming together. They're like coming on top of each other. And so what it is so we find out that Lucy travels to the other city, like she'll go up and then come down to the other city. So it's almost like it's an alternate dimension, or it's a mirror universe is really what it is. So I don't want to say too much more, but there's definitely a big reveal at the end in this mirror universe, and that characters that may be alive or dead in one universe may be dead or alive in said other universe. So I'm enjoying what Lemire is doing here. This is really quite an epic tale. And I love how it is both the present, the past, and possibly even the future of the Black Hammer universe. So I think this series is really, I think, going to change things, and I think it definitely is going to lead to ramifications throughout the Black Hammer characters, and we definitely see a lot of that at the cliffhanger of this issue. So it'll be really interesting to see. As you all know, I'm a huge fan of Black Hammer. You should just be reading any Black Hammer books, but this one's really wonderful. And Ward and Sheehan's artwork continues to really just really hit a home run on this book. It's really worth checking out. I really enjoy it. And like I said, if you really just go out and buy pretty much any Black Hammer book, you're definitely going to be happy. Next up, we have Batman 89, number 4, written by Sam Hamm with artwork by Joe Quinones. So what this issue, we're introduced to Robin. We really get to see Robin in this. And obviously, we know that at one point, Damon Wayans, I believe it was Damon Wayans, or it was one of the Wayans brothers, was going to be Robin. That was one of the plans. And of course, we also know that Billy D. Williams was going to be Two-Face. So what Sam Hamm has done, he has continued all this stuff that was originally thought of and developed for the original Batman series post the first one, but never quite made it. So what I love that the Hamm is doing here is he's doing all these things. It's basically what if they had continued what they were going to do with the movies. And it's really fascinating. I like how they've introduced the Robin and how he's not necessarily like the orphan from the circus and everything. And it really just fits really well into this Batman 89 movie universe. It's really interesting. And we also get the first glimpse of Catwoman. She's not Catwoman, but we get to see Selena Kyle in this issue. And so that was really nice to see, because we know that she's going to become a key part of this. They also do mention the Penguin and Max Schreck. So there's a possibility that they could both show up. We don't know yet, but there's definitely there's mention of them in this issue. So that's kind of interesting. So I think it does seem that Sam Hamm is sticking to the Burton universe and not going past that. So that I think is interesting. I think it's wise to just stick with the Burton universe in this. And Quinones just continues to really just bring it. He does a great job of actually capturing the actors when he can. He does a really good Michael Keaton. I really like that one. And his Billy D. Williams Two-Face, because we actually really get to see Two-Face, is really wonderful. It's a great looking Two-Face. I'm really enjoying this. If you're a fan of the Batman's, the Burton ones, definitely you need to be checking this out. Next up, we have Silver Coin number 7. This issue is written by Ram V. With artwork, as always, Michael Walsh. Once again, these are standalone issues, and one and done. You don't have to read any of them. That's what's great about them. You can just go pick up any issue, and they're solid stories. So this one is an amalgamation of the ancient Aztecs and Las Vegas. So what he does here is, it's if you win at gambling, there's a price to be paid. Things are not free in life, and that is the basic premise of the story without really giving much away. But as always, the story is centered around the mystery coin. That if you get the mystery coin, something probably bad is going to happen. That's what happens here. But it's once again, it's an old fable of, if you get, nothing is free in life. There's always a price to pay for something. And that's what the basic story here. Ram V does a really good job. I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed them all, but I love how each writer comes up with these different stories. And then I really, once again, have to praise Walsh's artwork, because each issue he does a slightly different style, and it really is just amazing and wonderful, and it's really, really good stuff. Like I said, it's one and done. You can just pick up this issue and it's all good. So definitely you should be checking out Silver Coin. It's really, really wonderful book. Next up, we have Crossover number 10, written by Donnie Cates with artwork by Jeff Shaw. And there's also Powers. There's a Powers. The Powers characters have been introduced into this. And that sequence is written by Brian Michael Bendis with artwork by Michael Avon Oming. So we know, so we're now having this, that the comic bubble is growing, and also that they're able to come out and the real world is able to go in. So we're starting to see how this is all coming together. And this, like I said, excuse me, that Donny Cates has created a really intriguing book here where it blurs the lines between comics and reality, and but he's also using different characters and different creators, and how the creators are affecting this mixed universe. And it's really intriguing, and I can't really say much about the story without because I don't want to give too much away, but we kind of there's a pretty big reveal of a comic creator in this issue. Not that it's surprising, but I think it really, the way it leads up to it is how things are going to go from here. So a lot of these past few issues have dealt with the government entity that's kind of trying to corral the comic universe coming into the normal universe. It really, that's what this second really story arc has been focusing on. And it just keeps building, and once again, I find it really interesting how they're using the powers to characters to interrogate them, and it's really been fascinating how it obviously Donny Cates kind of sets up the story, and then Bendis and Oeming come in and tell the power story, and it's just really quite fascinating how this book is really turning out, and I'm really loving it. And with the Bendis Oeming is really wonderful, especially if you're a fan of Powers, but I really also really have to point out Jeff Shaw's artwork on the rest of the book is just wonderful. He continues to just really and you definitely need to watch the panels, because there's nice little cameos of characters that cannot be in this book, but they're not prominent, but you see their back. And I'll say there's a giant green guy who gets angry and likes to smash stuff in the background of one panel. So he's not officially there, but he is kind of there. So those are nice visual nods and winks. I really am enjoying this book. There's a trade of the first story arc. If you haven't read it, you can check it out. I'm really enjoying this book. And finally, we have Swamp Thing number 10. I'm sorry, number 10. So this is the end of the first story arc. I'm sorry. It's written by Ram V with gorgeous artwork by Mike Perkins. So once again, this is the final issue of the first story arc. The good news is I'm going to cut to the chase in the sense of, yes, there will be more. Season 2 starts next year. I believe it says next spring. So in a way, this first story arc wraps up, but there's still definitely more story to come. So it ends, but there's still definitely more to come. And like I said, I've really been a big fan of this. I'm really a huge Swamp Thing fan. And I really have to give Ram V that he has done a fantastic job here. He has really captured what Swamp Thing is. And it's his take on Swamp Thing, yet he uses the history of Swamp Thing. There's definitely the influences of Len Wein, Bernie Wrightson, Alan Moore, John Totleben, all those creators, Rick Veitch. And he's very much making it his own, but he's using that history to build his story. And that is what really has been amazing. I think the thing is, you have to understand Swamp Thing and you have to be able to get the character, but make it your own. And that's what he's done. And that's what I think all good Swamp Thing stories have been, is acknowledge and use the history but make it your own. And he's done that very well here. And like I said, it ends, but it doesn't. And that's okay. I actually don't mind having a break and let this sit and then go back to the second story arc that he's doing. And as I've said from day one, Mike Perkins has been a fantastic artist on this book. Visually, he continues to amaze me with what he is able to do with really the scope of this book. Ram V writes a big story, and you need an artist that is able to capture this big story, and he does it so well. It's amazing. And it's a wonderful book, and I'm sure there's going to be a trade before the second story arc comes out. So if you've missed this, definitely pick up this trade if you're a Swamp Thing fan. That's going to do it. It's been a long show, folks. I'm sorry. We got through a ton of books this week. So once again, public service announcement. We'll do these quick. I get all my comics at Pulp Fiction Comics in Long Beach. Ryan, Annie, and Eduardo are there. Ryan runs a great store, have a great pull service, offers discounts. They have a sister store in Culver City, same name, different, completely different owners. But Chris and her team, that's Pulp Fiction Culver City, runs a great store there. Wonderful store in the up in Culver City. And once again, please be safe. Get vaccinated. Wear your mask. We're starting to get into the winter. Apparently, COVID's on the rise again. So please be careful out there. And as always, we end our show with be kind. Be kind to each other out there. Take care of yourselves. Remember, kindness doesn't cost anything, and kindness is good for both you and everyone else. So that's going to do it. Take care of yourselves. Make sure you please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then just continue. Thanks for all the support you guys have given me with these videos, and it's really great, and I hope they help you steer you towards some good comics. So take care, and we'll see you again next week. Bye bye.